Alright, so welcome to night 2 of Design Principles. So just surveyed the class and looks like we're no need to review the heuristics, but I'm going to post a little practice for homework to do on last night's material since I didn't do one last night, just to help reinforce those things again, and so you can look out for that later. But we're going to move on to Gestalt principles. There's a few design principles that will just help as you're thinking about working on your own applications and keeping in mind like typography and color and what that all means to your overall application. So Gestalt principles, there's a little thing here about how these came about. They're just like basically in psychology. Wait, I'm missing my something here. Okay. The Gestalt principles are a set of laws, in case you can't see the text up here, in the 1920s psychology describing how humans typically see objects by grouping similar elements, recognizing patterns, and simplifying complex images. Designers use these to engage users via powerful yet natural tricks of perspective and best practice design standards. So the first one is proximity. Oops, I don't know what's going on with my... Sorry, 1 second. So the first one is proximity, which refers to how objects are placed close together, being perceived as a group. So when they're spaced far apart, they are perceived as separate. So that's a pretty simple thing you'll see as you're adding spacing to your margin or padding, things you've learned about CSS properties, and how that will help keep in mind proximity when you want to group, you know, whether it's articles with a heading or you want to help add a little bit of like, you want to exaggerate whether things are, you know, part of a group or not. So here's a couple examples. Proximity spacing can be as close objects in direct contact or as far as opposite sides of a page. So you can use it as far as like completely spacing things apart, or if you want, you can, the strongest proximity relationship is when objects overlap with each other, so you have no doubt at all that they're part of a group. Why is this not changing? And then here's just an example of how it's being used in an actual article. So it's pretty extreme, but you kind of get the idea. Using other design elements such as lines or shapes to surround objects also creates strong proximity. So even though these things are like separated with space in between, the line is helping you realize that it's actually still one article. Yeah. It's just kind of just adding extra, emphasizing that it's part of a group even though there's pieces that are separated. With similarity, shared visual characteristics automatically create relationships. So the more alike objects appear, the more likely they are to be seen as a group. So you can note that similarity based upon what an object looks like, not what an object actually is. So these dogs are, even though all the dogs are different types, they look more similar on the right with their like coloring and their matching collars. So even though they're all different, you know, keep in mind the similarities between them, what they have in common. Similarity can also be achieved and they can be achieved in many different ways. So by shape, by color. So on the left, you can see that all there's circles and squares. They're different shapes, but they're the same color, so they look like those are part of a group. and the red ones look like they're part of a group. But if you look at them all in with the same color, then the circles look like they're more alike than the squares. And so using color to help with that, you can see with this article that the headings are all in orange. You can clearly identify also like the size and everything like too, but using with the color, and like we'll get to this later, but with like the typography, you can see that headings, you can clearly distinguish that the headings are the same versus the main text in case you want to browse. And then continuity is the next one. So this principle of continuity dictates that once the eye begins to follow something, it will continue traveling in that direction until it encounters another object. So in this case, whether you're looking like you're following the circles, which are similar, you're going to follow it in the direction up, and then with the squares, you're going to follow them down. And then also, like this arrow, you're obviously going to follow an arrow to the end point, but this image with the pointing hand is acting similar to an arrow where you're going to follow it to where it's leading. And you can see in this image that they're using the photo of the dog to add continuity to the page. So often when you add, I keep losing my mouse. When you add an image, you can help like kind of blend everything together by like using eye contact in a certain way. So this is an example of how that's being done there. Just have to figure out something's up with my computer here. Okay. So closure is the next one, and that relates to like if there can be pieces missing out of your design, but as long as there's enough information there, you can still kind of put pieces together. So there's pieces taken out of those circles, but you can still tell that those are circles, or you can also see that there's a star in the middle, or triangles, however your mind interprets it. But with the panda, there's lines missing on the top, but you can still see the difference where the white space is. You can identify that it is a panda. And then also with the type, there's pieces missing out of the letters, but it's clear that it's still an A. And then figure and foregrounds. This is a really important one actually in terms of material design, which we brushed on yesterday a bit, and just adding depth and dimension to your objects or your designs. So the figure ground principle is based upon the relationship between an object and the surrounding space. Figure ground is also referred to as the use of negative space, and the way it's using the space around it. So it's giving depth to these images, and you see that often in illusions like this on the right, where you either see it as, I don't know what you would identify this as, but you can either see, yeah, maybe a lamp, yeah, or two faces, and then here with the way this is set up with its depth. And so with the way the text is laying on top of the image, it's adding a little bit of extra depth to the photo. Right, so any questions on that before we move into color? Color is a lot of fun. I'm gonna skip a few things that are important about color till we get to accessibility tomorrow, but there's some really important pieces about color to understand when you're building your web application, to understand like the color theory and the psychology around use of color. but it is important to understand for people who have vision disability that you want to be careful with your use of color for color blindness and things like that. So in use of marketing, so this is just an exaggeration. I don't know if any emotions come to you by seeing a big red page, but it probably feels a little different than a big white screen that I had previously. Just like quickly looking at it. I mean, red is a pretty powerful color. It can, you know, evoke all kinds of different emotions, and it's used in different ways. But I just have a couple of quotes here about it. So color psychology, generally, is a branch of psychology from the broader field of behavioral psychology, and it's specifically the science of how color affects human behavior. And I have a couple of quotes here about how powerful it is. It takes a mere 90 seconds for a customer to form an opinion about a product, and 62 to 90% of that interaction is determined by the color of the product alone. That's pretty significant. Also, 85% of shoppers place colors as their primary reason for why they buy a particular product. I mean, a lot of this is just happening subconsciously, but it's important to understand that people really are affected by color. So I have, like, these are, again, you have my slides. It's probably going to be a little hard to see, but I can just read off a few things about, like, how color is used generally. Black, I was, like, thinking yesterday somebody mentioned that, like, a website that was very black. It looked sophisticated. It's used in power, mystery, formality. It can be used in evil, death. It kind of depends on the context. It really does get used a lot in, like, luxurious products. Yellow can either be a joyful experience or it can be a caution. So warning signs are yellow because they actually command the most attention than any other color. And but also it's the most straining on people's eyes. So you want to be careful about your use of yellow unless you really want it to be like a happy emotional experience. So you want to be careful with your use of the shade of yellow, or or you want to use it carefully with like attracting attention to certain pieces of your site. White, I mean, that's just like white space is actually really important, but it can also bring about either freshness or hope or goodness, purity, cleanliness, simplicity. It really can cover a broad range of things. Red, as we talked about, can either be danger, passion, romance, excitement. It can also be used as warning. Blue is actually the most, by men and women, blue is the most desirable color, mostly by men, but it's by any of the colors. Apparently, blue is the most comforting, and there's a few things that it points out: peace, stability, calmness, confidence, tranquility, sincerity, affection, integrity. I don't remember if I might have a couple examples, but I did see like a number of banks use blue as their main branding color. Facebook, you can like think about all kinds of brands, then their main color is blue, and there's a reason. Green. You like red, yeah, cool. I like red too, but I love blue. Green, it can be used either environmentally, it can be used for like to make people think about money, healing. So there's different things. Pink, it could be used for romance, compassion, faithfulness, beauty, love, friendship, sensitivity. Purple, there are some studies that purple is like the least desired color by men for some reason, and but women seem to like it. Again, it really depends on the person, but just generally there's some statistics there. Yes.
Is there like, and you probably, I don't know if you would answer this, but is there like a test you can take that will say like, well, if you like this color, then you're like.
I don't know. That's a good question. We should look that up. Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, that would be a cool experiment. There's so what I was gonna get into next, like with these, there's like, button color. typically you want to, like with your call to action, say on your heading page, you may either have 2 buttons. One's like your primary call, like shop now, or like sign up for our newsletter, and then you might have another one, and you'll color the button that you want to somebody click on first. You'll have you want consistency across all your buttons to a certain extent, but you typically will color your main call to action distinctly. And so, like, there's some explanations here, like why people use certain colors, but like there really is no right answer because everyone's different, and like it's different in the United States versus somewhere else. So like these are good to use as a guideline, but you definitely want to test your applications if you're going to use it for you know, a real purpose. Like if you want somebody to sign up for your newsletter or buy something off your site, you'd want to, you know, A/B test it. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but you can actually create landing pages before you launch an application. You would test one version of your home page in, say, like a blue button, and then you test and you target, like, I want to target this group with these colors, and I want to target this group with these colors, and see and compare, and you find out some interesting information. So it's pretty important to do that if you feel the need to really test your market, which can be important. This is an example of HubSpot. I thought that this one was interesting to point out, specifically because of its use of color, which is very surprising. So HubSpot tested their color. They have they tested it in green and blue. They're complementary colors, so it didn't really matter which one. But red is more attention grabbing, and but it tends to be used for like you know, green light for go, red light for stop, or warnings or validation errors typically are in red. So they chose red, which like you may think might not be the best choice for like a go button or like get started button, but actually 21% increased conversion with a red button. And so it's not clear exactly why, but there is a research study on it. Anybody interested in looking it up? But either way, you want to choose high contrast complementary colors to appeal to your audience, and then test them. And then the reason I brought this one up also is because you're supposed to avoid red and green like next to each other because of color blindness. So in this case, they're not being used next to each other, but you just want to be conscious of the use of, even though they're complementary, you want to be conscious of their use together. So let's see. There's basically 3 main components to color psychology: complementation, contrast, and vibrancy. So complementation is, you know, it refers to the way we see colors in terms of the relationships with others. So like I was mentioning, red and green, they tend to go together. They're opposite sides of the wheel. Contrast reduces eye strain and focuses the user attention by clearly dividing elements on a page. Most obvious example is black versus white. Most websites that have a lot of text, news sites, they have black text on white background because it's easier to read for everyone. And vibrancy is kind of what we've been talking about in terms of how it dictates the emotion of your design. So how, you know, what colors you use, how that affects people's emotions. And then in terms of actually putting a color scheme together, there's a few different ways you can go about it. So I'll show you some resources, and I got through those pieces pretty quickly, so we'll have a couple exercises we can do that may help you guys out with building out some color palettes for your own websites. And you know, it's always nice to, like, if you want to focus on development, have a designer actually do that stuff for you, but you know, it's good to understand how this stuff works as well. So triadic, you can, you know, just pick 3 different colors that are kind of just spread out. in a triangle. Compound would be like, they're complementary, but you can use like colors that aren't like completely opposite, or you use like a range of complementary colors. And then analogous would be you just pick some colors that are nearby each other. They look nice together because they're similar. So I put some palette resources together. Let's see. This one's pretty cool. So I'll demo it. I don't know if anybody looked at it yet, but Adobe Color Cooler. So you can play around with this, see what you like. It also just has themes available already. Cool. Is it going to make me sign in? That's weird. Alright, well, I'll figure that out later. As far as like those three different types, you can put a palette together. You can kind of play around and see, like, alright, I want my main color to be blue because that's popular, right? And then you can choose the type. I guess there's like a few others. I picked the 3 main ones, but there's some other ones you can play around with, like monochromatic. It's like literally the same, kind of like maybe there's different shades of the same color. And then the triad would be like I was saying, like just a triangle across the wheel. You can see what appeals to you, and then when you save your color theme, it'll give you the. You can also see them down here, and you can like adjust the tint or the shade to it, and come up with a palette that way. So that's a cool resource. Material design also has a color system that you can check out. I would recommend reading through some of their color documentation and how they approach putting a color palette together and theming your site. They also are, adding in some things we spoke about yesterday, and they have a lot of really nice information, and their biggest thing is consistency across applications. So you can get some good information off of this website. And HTML color codes this is just like a good way to bind color hex codes if you kind of know what you want to use already. You can play around with that. They all should. Yeah, the Adobe color wheel. They're on the bottom. My screen was covering it. So, yeah, they give you RGB and hex. And you can save your themes, and then I don't know if for some reason my themes section's not working for me while I'm not logged in. Yes. Oh, okay. But yeah, you can look at pre-made themes already, or you can create your own. All right. Any questions on color? All right. Typography is really interesting. There's a lot to it. I'm certainly not an expert on typography. There's so much involved with it, and there's so much history that goes into it, and depending on your culture, too. If you think about typography, like, there's just so many fonts out there, and there's a lot that goes into them in terms of, like, standards for, like, spacing letters apart from each other, or, like, providing spacing between words. I mean, there's some languages that, like, they literally used to not have spaces in between words, and there's a lot of history that goes into it, and a lot of information. But there are some basic standards that would be good for you to know about, just so your web applications look nice and are readable and provide a good experience to your users. So,
do you find like, I don't know if you like work, I don't know what you do, I'm sorry, but like I don't know, like do you find like people prefer a certain type of font, like you know you do your resume, it's usually Times New Roman or something like that.
Yeah, there's certain ones that are more popular, and I'm gonna show you what those are. But I own a software agency, so you missed my little intro yesterday. But we do custom software applications, and I do a lot of management with like project management, and also like focus more on the front end. Yeah, and so like in the beginning of all of our projects, we do a discovery and design phase, and I'll usually oversee that and make sure that we have all the information and research we need to move forward with development. Yeah. So typography also, in addition to color, can really convey different emotions and provide different, I guess just give an overall like look and feel and brand to your site. So a font family, I'm sure you guys know. Does anybody not know what font family is? Everybody is. So you can set that in your CSS, as you probably know. And it's just good to keep in mind you don't need to go crazy with font families. Good rule of thumb is not more than 2. You could put 3 in there if it makes sense. But 2 is pretty standard. 1 for heading, 1 for main text. If you want to like, you know, again with like the similarity principle, if you want to make your headings make your headings stand out, you can make that one font family, and then your text, your main text, another font family. And you can add more variation if you want with adding bold and italics, but you don't need to add like 4 or 5 different font families. You want to make sure that it's easy to read, clearly. Font size is important. There was a trend where super small text was a thing. You'll find more and more often now that larger text is common. And also, along with easy to read, you want to have appropriate line height and text width. And all of these things can be set in your CSS. So it's good to keep in mind the general rules for setting like measurements with the spacing and number of font families that you're using. And then I just have a note on the bottom, as I already mentioned, keeping in mind the principles that we just talked about: proximity, similarity, continuity, and contrast when selecting all of these different things in terms of grouping your content, providing good hierarchy to your site, whether it's like displaying certain content first or making sure your headlines stand out, things like that. So here's, to answer your question, a bunch of standards and averages about typography. So does everybody know what serif versus sans serif is? No. Okay. So yeah, it might be a little hard for you to see from the screen, but serif is like, it means that there's like little lines at the end of the letters. So you've probably seen it in text, like a lot of news text has that. So this, I actually put them different. Like serif, the word on my screen has serifs on them, and sans serif just means that they don't have those lines on the text.
Oh, okay, I can see.
Okay. Sans serif is actually still, it's been more popular for a while, but a lot of sites use both just to add contrast, and it looks interesting to have both on your website. You don't have to. You can have 2 different fonts that are both sans serif or both serif, but often you will see them used together. It's not like you don't have to use one or the other. The most popular, number 2, I listed, these are the most popular right now, or at least they have been. Georgia, Arial, Veranda, Helvetica, Lucida Grande. Light or dark background. White background for body copy is more popular. It's still a bit more easy to read, although a lot of sites that want to use black as their color, you'll want to just make sure you have a high contrast text. It doesn't have to necessarily be white, but something easy to read against the dark background. Average font size for headings is between 18 to 29 pixels, which is an average of 25.6 pixels. And an average font size for your body is between 12 and 14. You don't want to go smaller than 12, for sure. There's some cases where you will go smaller, like if you have like hints or small areas, like you'll need smaller text. But it's a good rule of thumb that between 12 and 14. And then there's actually a few different ways to calculate or to use to figure out ratios for your line heights and things like that. But the heading to body font ratio, you can use this rule if you want. It's pretty much just multiply by 2, and you could have a decent font ratio between your heading and your body text. If you want to make it more extreme, there isn't really a right or wrong answer, but these are pretty standard.
So does that mean if the body is 5 and your heading is 10, just multiply by 2?
Yeah. Yeah, and then the optimal line height for your body copy is about 1.5, which tends to be a default on a lot of documents when you're writing documents. You can change these again in your CSS if you have a design that calls for something different, but these are some standards. And then the space between paragraphs. Space between paragraphs in pixels divided by your line height in pixels is about 0.75. So one of my favorite sites, just design-wise, is a New York Times Magazine. I really like how simple it is. It's for a news site. It's they have really cool use of photography. They have nice typography, contrast, grouping, use of lines. You can, at all the New York Times websites, I find they're well done that way. Just simple, plain, but you can clearly read it. So that's a good example for typography. And does anybody use Google Fonts? Yes? Anybody not? Everybody has. Did you learn it in this class? Oh, okay. With who? Jeff? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I don't need to spend too much time on that. You guys already know how to add it to your document?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I was going to point that out in case you hadn't covered it. All right, so we can get right into some activities. So we're going to do something sort of similar to yesterday, but with the new information that I added in. You can pair up, you can group up, and you can decide on a website that you use often. And again, come up with the purpose of the website. Notice the use of, in this today, instead of heuristics, we can focus in on the Gestalt principles, color, typography, how they're using them to achieve their purpose of the website, whatever their goal is, and you think it's effective. And I realized yesterday that the reason I showed your websites off of my computer was because I wanted it to show up on the live stream, but I was on the wrong page, so I don't know if anybody checked out the live stream, but your presentations weren't actually visible. So we can do it again, and I'll make sure that they are visible. Or you can come up and use your own computer. Either way is fine with me. So we'll take about 30 to 40 minutes. If it doesn't take that long, if I see you guys are done before then, we can go into presenting. So, yeah. Sound good?
very brief videos for you.
So she just makes these free videos.
It's called Office.
Like, seriously.
So, I don't actually.
Lego? See that one? Like Lego that kind.
But I really.
So what is the purpose?
Simple design she
I haven't been working on my side project in like
Also, like they use like orders. Did you see how it's back?
well, she's after
Like lacking.
video and they're all together.
And that's where they use these videos. She has like a light gray line that separates the different sections.
So there's definitely a breaking page, this one's huge. And then it's just a very repetitive pattern. They kind of use the thumbnail and then that's the side. Well,
So she has her headphones, so separate.
it just
So a lot of and it's easy to tell. Story. Video. So, story and associated video. People, national sources, video separates that like green light, and it's easy to tell the headlines and the story. That it's okay. Alright.
So I would say that that's the main reason people ordinarily come is to find the videos.
And it talks about separation as well as
And then there's over here, there's an introduction.
Yeah.
Adrian.
This is another filter, right?
Get smaller. And then there's an ad here.
so I'll just put down that that early design elements.
It's just very simple, sharp contrast. Very common, very clear.
Design elements like proximity.
It's, I mean, it's colorful, yeah, because it's a label. But that's part of
Similar.
the brand of product.
So she's got some good videos all put together by her topics. So she's got the journey into the foundation. Foundations will be able to sell more and more compositions, which are very much like the class, such a big one.
Well,
And she really goes in depth in a way that they usually don't from class.
it says here on a page shows a similar size circles and squares. The line is separated into two groups based upon color. But if the squares are all the same size and color, the line will group them according to shape.
Yes. So on her page, there's very little color, or even a parts is very slight, but see this tab is very. So it's got a line around it. So like you could do a raise, just go over it. You can see it's not part of the site.
It's like that. So she only uses two
There's some websites that I would avoid reading when I'm like don't have points on. But I think that there are some websites that are actually like usually. Like that's what it is.
the gray line separates each story. Minimal color. You have to put that on the ring.
And then that is a little differentiated.
Architecture site.
Differentiated by the way that they're aligned on the page.
The most satisfying thing
And they also present more color. Oh, and there's closer, let's see.
Yeah, just a totally different style, much easier. But I like that there's a limited amount of average. And she's pretty popular, so I think it's probably designed.
Who designed this?
Also, them have like separated.
Continuity.
Okay, so as far as similarity, her headings and her sub-headings, her headings and then the content are similar.
That's headline, video, text.
So, headings, content, say all paragraphs, use the same font.
Well, then it's the video and
Oh, okay.
repeating design, very basic, very simple,
So,
very basic, clear headlines.
so all, are these images or videos? Is that just a picture? Okay, so I'm gonna say all story images align to the left of the story.
It takes you to
Oh, okay.
I'm in class.
To the left of alright, so I'll change that.
And here it looks like
So,
even the
like it.
How about the highest advertising? So
they use different colors for
All
magnets.
story video thumbnails. Align to the left of the paragraphs. And, the left of the paragraph that's the headline. It's like a story snippet. But then when you click on this, it takes you to the full story, right? And then click on it, or it takes you to the video.
if the website changes in terms of like color or even in terms of images, read that, why do I want one thing? So it looks like a newspaper.
Move on to the next one. Content it takes that once that I
It's got like different color that,
traveling in that direction.
yeah. The color surprising me. I thought the color.
know who she is. I've seen her show. It's hard to say. Use of white space in contrast to the smooth, dark text helps to eyes to where each bar ends and where each section ends. Sound good? The white space also lets us know that the ads on the side of the page are separate. So the ads have like a little border around each one. This one, like, that's already. To help guide that. Flexible rules. Figure.
Don't leave your house.
I guess it's kind of like what you were saying. I does drawing works for a while.
So I'll just say continuity.
Horrible all the time. Suck. And there's no rules. Like there's no stop.
But yeah, that's not right. Here's continuity. A dog is
So similar to compare and contrasting between like order, like compare and contrasting between like order websites and illustrator websites. Because looks like on here, you guys maybe do tools and then some podcast from like
They do.
so here's
Of course they do.
here's the it's freaking good.
Right.
It's really like aesthetic, like it's just so nice.
Here she used geometry.
And it's like interesting because I feel like these are look like they're more professional clothes, and Grubhub is kind of like discretionary. Like okay, she's on like the logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the local ones are like just the logo. And
He was just not as great. Scratch where she's.
yeah. So
Relationship of the images to the surrounding
I guess so.
Yeah, they all have a horizontal line in there. And it does definitely give you a sense of thinking about it. Her videos are all like that.
Oh, okay.
Window.
And then
Oh,
Stone and
oh, now it's less. So I was there.
Snows it off.
Yeah, in November.
What's in it?
Yeah. Yeah, like 68. Here.
Be like the song.
Just read the right. There's a lot more negative things though, which is nice. I think it's usually what is it?
Yeah.
It's the third part. Also, like,
Yeah, I would say so because
it's very simple. These little things just mean like they're either heads or not. Like this is. Yeah, it's literally almost every single mention. Well, they're like standard, like universal kind of minor say the big city. So, like you don't need to read. You don't need to read all that.
It's for really bad reading.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah, I just work hard. Yeah.
That's why you need
So I did go to the biggest position
Yeah.
of yoga.
I like organized
see, I was thinking. I mean, I think they use all the conditions.
It's what we value when we don't.
So that gives a position.
It's not
That's what I'm
color. A basic color, very simple. Oh, it's official?
Yeah, it's official.
Or is this an extra one?
It's official. Sales, IQ sales.
Awesome.
I had official yesterday. So, for one. I've been there for the last 2 years. So I was, I guess I was promoted to position and now. Yeah, I'm pretty excited overall. I think that in terms of integrating like my interesting business and technology, one thing that I can actually do is in that role is do like a lot of sales automation. But I don't know, I feel like sales it's a good path, but it's also like sometimes I feel it's I mean you have to be on the phone a lot, but then that's the thing, like if all you call and not people, if you're efficient enough people to get your way.
It was a little bit fun. I mean, it's scary. I tell my daughter all the time, like, so whatever he wants to write, get on the phone.
Yeah.
You have to be bold. It was super. Never was
You're fine. Yes, if once I get like customers, well, first travel is I have to go to corporate to train. So next week I'll be in Minnesota. I've done Minneapolis. So what? You've been there? Any suggestions? Oh, they don't do it. Yeah,
Do they have like the workspace?
Good, because I just had $2,500. Those things probably be rich. Would you buy that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm still, because right now we only have like 28 started, but we're on to so is that like yeah, and then also we were planning on having weekend like TA sessions, so we will like between like I think there's about like 6 or 7 of us who are TAs, like we all make someone spends all their time in their class, right? Like someone else maybe could be like reading here, see if they know the material really well. Yeah, just doing all the
Like you started off with this thing between
yeah, sometimes I'm human contact. I feel like
You're like, oh.
you guys should. I keep dragging my kids in, and they're like, we don't know how to do this.
All right, guys, we're gonna start doing some presentations again, so we can see what you guys came up with.
Oh, yeah, no.
Are you going to pull up our website?
Yeah, I'll pull it up so it's on the stream. Should we go in the other order this time?
Yeah, let's start first.
We have enough. We have plenty of time now. All right, what was your site? All right, guys, we're gonna start doing some group presentations. So
we were looking at the Yoga with Adrian website.
oh
She's
yeah,
a-
I've used yeah.
YouTube stuff, which she only started in like 2015, making free yoga class videos and putting them up.
Is it?
And now she's like got millions and millions of followers, and she makes like like somewhere between $3,000 and $45,000 a month. You know? And so now she's moving into membership. So I was saying to Jennifer, I never thought of really buying a membership before. I always hesitate because I'm always like, no, use it.
Just her website, right?
Yeah, I'm on the website now. So it's just yogawithadrian.com.
Okay.
But I was saying to Jen, like, this is the first time because I watch your videos a lot, and I find them really helpful, especially when I'm anxious or, just my mood is off or whatever, and focusing, meditation videos, or foundation videos. But I mean, I think it's just such an amazing business model, and now she's selling these memberships. So I was like, I've never thought about buying. I mean, sometimes Netflix and stuff, but like in terms of just for yoga content, like. It's a new way that she gets all the money, I guess, to herself because she's not on a platform like, like Hulu or not exactly.
She has a YouTube channel.
She has a huge YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And this is like another layer of content that we've got exclusively. But I mean, I'm not like convinced, but I was just saying if it's to a point where I'm even thinking about it, it's probably an inflection point, like in terms of selling those memberships, but not really. I'm really that much of a adopter for something.
So do you think her site's trying to appeal to people who aren't just in it for the free yoga? They want more content.
That's the draw. I think she's very good at developing a very good sense of intimacy, sort of like in class. And I think that is reflected in the website too. It always looks like she's just like in her bedroom or something. A studio, a home studio. She gets more glam as the years progress. But it's always that basic studio background. It's like, like literally.
And I look at that and I'm like, oh, I feel like I can do yoga anywhere. It's not like a gym or, with the mat. But she doesn't have a mat. She has her plants behind her.
Yeah, she's trying to appeal to everyone. So, because yoga can seem intimidating, so she wants it to feel comfortable.
And she's good at that. I think that there's a really, I find it interesting. I like the yoga, but I just find it interesting. In yoga classes, I've got reputation of being I don't want to get into psychology classes.
So, what do you guys think about the design?
I like it because it's not like some yogi standing in the ocean. So
in terms of the principles.
We covered each principle one by one. I'll speak to proximity. So proximity, it talks about the spacing of the object in direct contact or as far apart as the opposite sides of the page. And so what we said was that she has her headlines and her stories and the associated video, and each section is separated by a light gray line. So it's easy to see like where things are grouped together.
Which page?
Go back to the home
I
page.
think this is the home page.
Say the free yoga videos.
So, right there. Yeah, you can see she's got them all arranged in different groups.
so and then proximity is retained as you expand and contract the page with itself responsive. So like that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And it's a simple design and it's well organized in terms of the headlines and ads.
Right, if you're just wanting to do a video, it's a very good place to just go and find it. Comments are very clearly marked, which I think is really crucial for developing the community.
Yep.
More so than like for most things, I feel like. And I feel like she's really tired in this one.
I noticed she uses black and white and blue and all sans serif font.
Right, and that speaks to similarity, and that is a continuous theme throughout her website. Also, with her links at the top of the page, so all the links are black background with white text. But as you hover over each link, that the expected behavior is that it's going to turn like that. I guess that's turquoise, and so that's consistent throughout. The way that she uses her fonts are also consistent. The headings are all the same size, same font, as well as the font look and size that she decides to use for each story.
Mm-hmm. I feel like there's so much breathing space, which kind of goes with the yoga, and
Right.
white space and the blue color, which like is subtle but comforting.
And what we were saying about the white space is that even though it's white space, it literally is an object like the text, because when you run into it, your eye stops and it wraps back around to the next line or the next object. So I don't think people tend to think of white space as an object, but in this case it really is.
Cool.
Let's see, so then we look at some similarity. Yeah, so I think that covers continuity. So she, you can see where the text wraps around from one line to the next. But once again, because of her effective use of white space, which I'm saying in this case is an object, to stop and to go to the next line. You want to talk about how she puts the ads on the side?
Yeah, I like that page doesn't have a ton of advertising on it. There's just one ad. It's always got a pretty distinct border. There was a Hulu ad first, that was green line.
Yeah, there's a lot of space for advertisements though.
Yeah, so I like that. It's pretty easy to see where the ad is. I do tend to just skip over the ads, so and that makes it easier. I like that. I don't know, but for an advertisement, that's obviously not a great thing.
And you can tell it's a different section.
Yeah, you can tell very easily it's a different section. But it's cleaner than, it's, most places have more ads on the side or whatever, it seems like. But she probably, she's got, I can't imagine that there's not a lot of, there's one ad, like businesses, but I don't know what that decision is. It's interesting.
So the next item is closure, and we couldn't really figure out where closure related to this. It says that closure is related to continuity and that it asks the eye to complete a path.
Yeah, it might not really apply as much as the other ones in this.
But I do think the poses she's in the, on the page with the videos does draw your eye and make you feel that sense of stretching or, to kind of go along with what she's doing.
She does have lines that are broken, but they still look like lines. Yeah.
And so the last one was figure foreground.
Yeah, it's not huge, it's not a lot of depth, it's making it look more like a newspaper. But I like the sense of depth created in the pictures, because like I said before, I feel like it's an invitation. You're actually inviting her into your home, but it feels like she's inviting you into her studio because of the way, because of the foreground is depicting the horizontal lines in there.
Mhm.
You definitely feel like you're moving into her space.
And I like the fact that it's not too generic. Had that white banner not been layered behind her body, it probably would have seemed more homemade. But the fact that she does have that, white banner behind her that says office break, and it's not completely opaque, so because you can see some of the background bleeding through it, it's saying it says without like actually typing it, you know, this is a quality production because the office break font, it's really clean, the yoga, but then you're like, oh, well, okay, so this is something for me to pay attention to, but then you look at her and it's like, oh, but it's also laid back.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that banner in general is an example of the figure in foreground too,
Right.
laid on top of the image.
Yeah, and it also makes it seem like she's jumping off the page, just giving like a 3D effect.
Cool.
So we really like her use of figure foreground in relation to the banner, and then her body position is always in front of it.
Nice. That was a good example. Thanks, guys. All right, you're up. Which one did you do?
Yep, we're going to talk about the aesthetics of Grubhub.
Yeah.
I took it.
You're gonna make us all hungry.
Because I use frequently, and I was like,
Somebody
Do I have to have an account? I have one, but unless you want to use yours, doesn't matter.
I don't know my password. It's already signed in by phone.
Let's see if this is it.
Hey.
Cool.
Cool. All right.
Okay, all your banners. The logo is different on yours. The top, the header, like the top nav bar is like red on ours. And
Oh.
like the word Grubhub is white. It's the opposite.
Oh, that's interesting.
Apparently red makes people hungry.
Is it?
Yeah. It's like color, psychology color. So that was one thing. I don't know where we started.
Other things about Grubhub, if you want to talk about proximity, they do group similar items together. For instance, the search bar is 3 identical rectangles. Okay, or it's different on mine.
Responsive. Yeah, it's just responsive and be like, whatever. They belong next to each other, they go, they stack in the column. There you go.
Yeah, I feel like that. There we go.
Okay.
They have the food in the background there.
Talk about their side.
That's background for their ugly advertisement.
Mm-mm.
Which we don't like. I feel like it messes up the flow of the whole website. That's what they talk about it. They use one font in the whole website.
Specific to Grubhub.
Oh, it's their own.
Yeah, Grubhub stands bold.
What?
That's the name of the font that they're using, which I thought was really interesting. I wouldn't have thought, Grubhub.
How did you figure that out?
I went to the developer tools in CSS. Or CSS. Sorry. Developer tools in Chrome, and then looked at
Nice. So you investigated the actual font. Nice.
checked it out, which also works for continuity in that it uses a similar font throughout the whole website, not switching fonts everywhere. With the exception of like the Taco Bell logo, obviously, and stuff. A little different. There's continuity on the site in that it's basically just one giant column. There's not, and it is stacked in different places. Yeah, exactly. It's like a giant tower food.
There's not a lot of like negative space. There's negative space on the sides and like between groupings, which makes it clear that they're groups. But I find it to be a little crowded when you're looking at like a whole group or something.
I also compared it to a website that we used to order food when we were in India, which is like completely different. And there was like a lot more white space, and it was much simpler, like minimal information. I thought was interesting. I don't know if that's like a cultural type of aspect of the website.
Like, I didn't think this was that busy until I looked at sweden.com, which is the site we went to, and that was a lot less cluttered.
Curious.
Yeah, so check out that.
Yeah. It might give you a hard time about like what you're looking at because you're not in India, so you can't deliver any food.
But look at how nice that is. That's very good.
If you click on, see the areas underneath the search. If you click on Bangalore, it should pop. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's really clean. So click on one of the categories.
Which one do you want?
I don't care. Solid. Yeah, so that's super clean.
Yeah, you can see a difference.
Yeah, it's a big difference. The other interesting thing about, because we were talking about color, is on this one. The little green and like brown. I don't know if it's on this.
Yeah, there's the brown.
These?
Yeah, those.
Or the like tab thing.
Click on one of the restaurants. Yeah. So next to each menu item, there's a little square with a circle inside, and it just denotes if it's vegetarian or non-vegetarian. And those are like universal symbols that are used throughout the whole country on menus. So that like because of the variety.
In India?
Yes. Because of the variety of languages, you don't have to like interpret if it's veg or non-veg. You can just look at that.
These things?
Yep. So that means it's non-veg. It has egg or meat.
Do you happen to know if the States has something similar?
Well, we have letters that represent.
Yeah, I've seen that.
GF is gluten free, V is vegan.
I think those are pretty standard.
Yep. And these are just, I think, because of the variety of languages in a country like India, they just use like a symbol instead of a letter.
Cool.
Yeah. But the color coordination makes it really easy to differentiate. I think here we have some color coordination sometimes as well.
The only thing I'd know is, I don't know if it's brown. Is it brown or red?
It's brown.
Okay. Like someone colorblind, I don't know if it would be too similar.
That's why I brought it up because it's like used everywhere, but
it's the same exact icon except for the color, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in that case, I think maybe letters is
Could be
better, more accessible. Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you, anything else on Grubhub?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. They use green for checkout, like standard, blue for like searching location, like very fast and stuff.
Should we try to get something?
Yeah, sure.
I ordered Asian fusion recently. Should I reorder it?
Yeah, sure.
I hope it doesn't charge me though. So, shopping cart turns green.
Oh, ours was green. Well, the bag in the top, is that green?
It is green. Yeah, the bag is green. So now it's starting to use blue.
Yeah. It seems like it was different on ours for whatever reason. But yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thanks, guys. Interesting investigative work. All right. Are you guys in the corner? What did you?
We looked at Amazon again. Purpose, obviously, well, we found a couple different purposes. To sell you something, or sell you lots of things. Let's approach that for people who come to sell on Amazon. I I've done research there, looking at prices. Meant for users. It also seems designed to keep pulling you in because somehow we ended up in Cards Against Humanity and the different spin-off brands from stop talking. And then, but it pulled us in before we even knew it was pulling us in. So color to achieve goals. It's funny because it's much different than the main page we saw yesterday. But lots of muted tones, nothing too bold.
I'm gonna have a thing. So if you go on the top and you have like Amazon, the little search box on the right or the
What am I looking for?
just go on the search box.
Search.
And then on your right, you're just gonna click on the drop down. You have the drop down box. No, on your left. Yeah, and then just go in. You have like fitness. So if you go in there, you're gonna notice like a different color from the rest of the page.
Do you want me to click on something? Oh. What do you want me to click on?
Fitness or exercise.
I don't see fitness. Health?
Health, household, baby.
No, it's sports and outdoors. Sorry, it's sport. If you click S, I think it's going to take you down to that.
So it chose the selection.
Oh, you have to hit return.
I can just talk about it, but if you go in there, you're going to notice they have different colors, like that.
There we go.
Yeah, so they have a lot of gray colors, and which can be associated with ruggedness, and you have blues, and which is associated with masculinity, and a little bit of strength, so they play with colors a little bit this and that.
As a side note, gray is not something women typically like, but men are okay with, I guess. So I don't know if that's like stereotypical or what. But I mean, men and women also like blue, so it's kind of interesting.
There's a grayness to all this blue.
Yeah. And then if you go into the luxury brand, you're going to notice a lot of metallic colors.
Is that a category? Luxury, beauty, or?
Luxury beauty.
Oh, that's cool. I never actually noticed that their different categories change. Well, that's kind of yeah.
So they just play around with colors based on
And font, yeah.
font. Yeah. They play with fonts. So like
You see the black?
like bigger fonts at the top, and then in the body they have like very similar. They have the fonts are the same size. So like the title is bigger than whatever is inside it.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they're copying. I've never been to this. A good Amazon copy 3 times a week, and I've never been to this page. It looks like somebody else is actually copying a luxury beauty brand. Never even seen the differences. No, I just go to the same places.
So here's an example of the main headline, like using sans serif, or I'm sorry, serif, and then the rest is serif.
I think they use Amazon for quantity. I was working in
Which one? Any of them?
on Amazon. I mean, I'm just gonna
Yeah, so you found the font name is Amazon.
Amazon Amber. That's in computer.
Amazon Amber, yeah.
So it just like on her. Some stuff is like the cloud option.
Cool. Anything else?
And you said it's fairly system certified, which means uniform all throughout, so it was organized and all over the place. That's mainly, and they emphasize the product. So like on the main page, they usually use like very neutral colors. So like the product outshines the design. Like you have like white.
Oh yeah, the product stands out. No, actually, I can't tell what color this is from here, but if it's gray or beige. Can you tell better on your computer? But is it gray? The background color? Because, I mean, they say beige or ivory helps them, like, bring out, it's pretty neutral. It brings out the, like, the attention of everything else on the page.
Yeah, they have RGB two, and in parentheses they have like 250.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's like it has an opacity on it. All right, thanks, guys. All right, what did you guys do? Is it the three of you together? Or two? Two? Okay. Only asking because you were together like yesterday. So.
It's ASMOBIUS.co.jp.
Asmobius? Asmobius? I don't know. So it's got a custom loading. What is loading going on here and here?
It wasn't that. It came up.
Well, we're testing out its system status right now on my computer.
ASMOBIUS.
Is this not the right thing?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. Oh, got it.
So yeah, this is the site. That was really cool. The purpose of this site it's kind of small. But
Yeah, I don't know why. Sorry about that. I probably have a bunch of things running.
It looks a lot smoother. Yeah. So it took a while for us to figure it out. We thought they were selling like apartments at first. When you go to the about, it talks about just architects and his designs and all the awards that he's won.
So, side note, it's probably using like a lot of like video or like I don't know. It's good to test your applications on a slow speed, and like I'll get to this later this week, but when you inspect usability in a certain way, sorry to interrupt, but even though it like looks cool, if you're like on the highest speed, if you use it like I don't know what's going on my computer right now, it's like it sounds like it's gonna explode, but it's probably using a lot of there's a lot going on behind the scenes here. So all right, anyways, continue.
Yeah. So if you scroll down to the picture, and it talks about this now.
Oh, cool. So it wasn't clear from the homepage what it was about.
No. You got the general definition. but they spell evenly, like, the keyboard section, like, with the learning going through the songs, it kind of divides it up in half, so it's like a fantastic environment.
So it doesn't scroll down, right? You can just like kind of move around.
Yeah, if you hold it, hold the hold down and then move to kind of to select the image. Like click it, click and hold inside the circle. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, or you can press next. And it is. For the similarities, if you hit all, it'll put them all in line.
Cool.
Each one kind of, they all look similar, but they also look very distinct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point that I didn't bring up, like the way people read. It's like a nice, like, consistency, standards. Yeah. Oh yeah, I see that. And like the blurriness. It's kind of a cool feature they have like on the bottom right. Like you can see the image number out of 19 and like that it's loading. Mm.
And when you go to all, it has that same effect, where the words seem like they are in the foreground and the pictures in the background. And still, you can still see some of the circles. Move a little closer, then it's another thing. It seems like there's like multiple layers.
Oh wow. I want to know how they built this.
Yeah. It's a competition. But the color is black, and black is associated with big time. Not really sweet, and also like the protection of white as like really, simplicity. picking up the course of it, like, they do something again.
Yep. Like grayscale, monochromatic kind of feel.
It was, it had like butter medium or something, butter medium. That's like the hypothesis.
Okay. Throughout the whole site? Or the...
You look at that thing, that's the most text on it.
Was it the headlines or the main text, you know?
I think it was all, I'm not sure. We specifically the headline. We know that. The big one. Or the title.
Okay, so the body text, or the... That doesn't seem right. You see it?
I think it was the title that
Well, anyways, that's cool that you found it. The headline text though is serif, so they're mixing them together. This looks like kind of more sophisticated, and then the text itself seems pretty readable. Very big size difference.
Yeah.
That's like pretty extreme. Trying to make a statement for sure.
A nice touch is like the little circle ecology. It makes whatever you go over negative. So we have to zoom in to see it, but it takes you to negative or whatever you see.
What do you think you did that?
Huh?
Okay. Anything else? Cool. How did you come across this site? I'm just curious. Found it? Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, that's a cool site. Localsyr.com.
So the first thing that we noticed is that they do look, there's a lot of voice space. Also, the proximity to featured articles that are up top, and you can also like the kind of businesses and stuff on as well. But the most featured article is bigger and to the left, and then as you go to the right, there's smaller and less featured articles. And then you can scroll down and others. And as you scroll, there's lines that separate different categories. And then keep going, and that's also separated. There's a similar scheme throughout. There's the same text used, which is actually media content, and then it defaults to the regular. As far as depth goes, at the very top, they kind of put the article text over the image, and then there's also a button in the upper right-hand corner, and that indicates that there's video on that. And they use pretty consistent font throughout.
Yeah, if you actually go to the community tab, and then there's a little minorities section.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that I found that actually broke the consistency of the page was the fact that the little article on the right-hand side seemed to stand out from everything else, and the use of spacing seemed to be odd with like the resources, because there was too much space between the center section and the contact information.
Mm.
It's also very small, which is not the way that the rest of the site
The like little bit underneath blended resources is like centered and italicized, sort of like a maybe you have like a testimonial or something, but that's just like normal text. So
Mm.
that like definition is like misleading.
Yeah, I can see that. Sounds scary.
It is.
That's like twice.
Living with Lyme.
But doesn't the text just look way too small? I mean, they're trying to convey information.
Yeah. Localsyr.com.
It just seems inconsistent with the rest of the website. If you click on other articles and other pages that are featuring like this, it's not so small. So that was kind of drew our eye to that. Just because we were like, what is that?
Yeah, for sure. There's an eyesore there.
Correct. CDC prevention and maybe labs different. There's almost enough space for you to think that it might be like a form.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Is that cool? Nice.
One that we didn't really have in there was the closure, but when we loaded the page first, there was like a federal at the top, and their logo actually it's circle but made to look like a G. That is a little different. But every time you load the page, they add changes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, nothing's jumping out at me either, so. Cool. All right, last group. What did you guys do?
We did Lego.com.
Cool.
So pretty much what Lego is, with all the designs and concepts, it's pretty much a mixed bag of everything, because the whole site to me is designed to appeal to kids, grown-ups, Lego users. And, you know, Legos have many themes, many colors, so they play with that.
They definitely thought it out on how they wanted it to look for each side. If you go into the grown-up side, a lot of it is the white background and everything is, pretty well uniform, spaced out. You can see, everything clear. Colors are all over the place. And if you're on the kids' side, their background isn't at the top either. They get they change those colors.
Are kids going to the Lego website?
Yeah, if you do stuff on the bottom.
These kids is going to a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
they can play games on there. They can.
Okay, I was trying to think of like, is it for selling or is it for playing, or like, because parents care if it's fun for their. But that makes sense if there's games and stuff.
They can watch videos. Each little icon on the photo does something that, like, I think with the brick, it'll tell you like how to build it.
Okay, cool.
And if you click on like at the top in the header part, the different, I guess, icons.
Oh, there's like a lot of horizontal scrolling. What? Sorry.
The icons at the top, It has like that many, like it transitions differently when you pick up.
Oh wow.
Each one of those.
Nice little animation. Yeah, there is. Cool.
Activity, and you can see, I put down the items are posted. It's different for each side, the grown-up side, the kid side. Um, the layouts are kind of different. Obviously, the kids are more playful.
Yeah, definitely.
But they use both direct contact and overlap. Really,
So they use minorities center throughout the whole website, and then it's around they do a platform line with they combine them together. And then
So that's about double for the headline. And cool. Anything else? Yeah, there's a lot of colors, especially on the kids side. A lot of custom design work.
in their customer service area on the grown-up side, they do use green.
The grown-up side. Why is there like you're leaving a kids zone pop up on the kids but not on the grown-ups?
Because when you go over to the grown-up side, now you have the potential to shop
Oh,
and
okay.
purchase items. You don't have that.
So they're trying to avoid kids from leaving that for that reason, you think?
there's some. She was just looking up. There's some things up there that cost like $800.
Yeah, there's Lego sets in there. Yeah.
I forget which one it was.
Where is that?
So, like support, I think if you go to support for customer service.
Was it on the top? Oh.
Customer
Yeah.
service, no matter which, that's pretty good. Green in the background and green in the border. I think even for like building instructions and like some pieces, yeah, like all of that, it still remains green.
Mm.
No matter which one you go to. So that's kind of like tailored it out. In a way that you have.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's not much use of red or there's some yellow, but like in their main logos, like a lot of red. And I don't see much of that throughout the site, and that's probably for specifically, I don't know why, but
Yeah, they don't use it a lot in like in the high school banners. They use pretty much every other color and banners. Yeah. Oh, so like foreground. I think that you see that a lot of spaces.
what'd you say?
Well, on this page, there's a lot of negative space.
Mm.
And for me, what I got from the site is each different page, depending on what is on the page, they play with all of that. You know, color, text size, figure foreground, closure, continuity. Again, the site is about Lego, so it's about toys. You know what I'm saying? So the site is, in my opinion, set up for you to interact and play with it in different styles and designs. So
Cool. Yeah, yeah, that's a good observation.
Yeah, it definitely gets you. Obviously, they don't want you to come in there and purchase their items, but even like I even went in to see like what their career page looked like, and that's blue. If you go to career page, like everything there is green. If you go into jobs. No, everything turns blue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of neat.
Has anybody been to the Lego land anywhere?
I would probably have to be there for days.
Do they have a Lego store in New York City?
Yeah.
I feel like I've
They
been
got,
there.
I think, one. There's one right at Rockefeller Center. Where the Christmas tree is.
Well, I mean, if you want to move, I mean, they have jobs all over in China and Australia.
Nice.
So you want to move Denmark?
Cool. Right. Well, that was really interesting. Nice work, guys. I feel like I learned a lot from looking at different sites.
How do you keep up with what's, like, I know looking at sites generally, but how do you professionally, like, kind of keep up with what is going on in terms of user interface or experience?
Just by researching like the trends that are going on and like standards, and material design helps a lot with that. Really depends on like who you're working with. Like if a client has a certain brand already, a certain brand identity, or if you need to start over and create a new one, there would be a lot of research that would go into it. But so I don't really have much more material left, but there's a couple more things, and then I have like something that's kind of a homework assignment, but you can use the rest of the class to work on it. Let's see.
Should we take a break now?
Oh, I forgot about a break. Yeah, let's do a break, and then I'm just gonna like briefly go over like high level additional design principles you guys can look up. And then we'll get into that other activity. So yeah, I could take a 15-minute break and just take the rest of the class to work on that. Thank you for the reminder.
Or make a WikiLeaks. Like that would be great foundation.
I was gonna make a
Blah blah blah.
yeah, but
So I'm like,
just
just
like they
piecemealing everything, and I don't like that. Like, I need to know why.
like
Like, why am I writing?
There's like APIs for like soccer, or like.
Well, I guess I'll wait till she comes back, actually. All right, just gonna run through a few more principles really quick. Actually, I'm just gonna like show you a list of them because it just seemed like a lot to like, you know, principle after principle. You can like, you know, look up some of these also on your own. A lot of them you've already identified. I was noticing as I was going around, people were noticing them themselves in terms of like rhythm and balance. I don't know if you like said the word rhythm specifically, but balance, rhythm, and proportion and patterns were all, you could identify them in some of the sites that you presented. Like with rhythm, there's a few different ways you can show that, whether it's like having symmetrical spacing in between rows or columns, or having more of like you know, just having a pad doesn't have to be like the exact width, but it could be like a repeatable pattern that people would like feel familiarity with, something that's repeatable. It doesn't have to necessarily be the exact same width in between. But there's different ways that you can provide rhythm, and you can also do it with hierarchy, where maybe it's like a design with like a lot of like, say maybe it's circles, and you have like a pattern of like a number of circles on the bottom, and they float up, but you can see that there's hierarchy with the objects that are, you know, lower. So there's different ways you can work with rhythm in a way with design, and with balance. Like pretty typical example would be like how your layout is arranged, whether things are like totally balanced on left and right or in the center, or whether there was an example, I forget who it was, where some photos were like larger on the left, and then but there were more images on the right, and so it balanced it out. Even though like an image is larger on the left, you feel like it's balanced. So there's different, and again, you can look into these a little bit more, but these are some basic ones that that you should keep in mind. I have resources in the notes, some things we went over already, the heuristics, the color resources for creating palettes and looking at hex codes. And the typography, Google Fonts you already know. There's a link to a resource on some guidelines that I presented, and also a design system like material design is helpful to review the documentation on and think about. I'm sure a lot of money went into that project, so it's cool to follow what the system, the design system with material design is all about. So the final thing, we have like half an hour left. You can use it as your own free time to work on this and the you know, feedback survey or anything else that you need to get done for tomorrow. I post another homework assignment, but keep in mind that tomorrow, before we start accessibility presentation for the next 2 days, I'm going to just have like probably a much shorter presentation. Just go around and tell me what brand you came up with for yourself. So this, you can use the rest of the time to, you know, create a color palette, think about how you would use it in an application. You probably want to think about like whether it's for your you know, final project, or whether it's like a personal site, or just, you know, an example what it would be used for. It doesn't have to be a real site, but it could be. And then select 2 font families and just overall think about why you chose those things. So you can work on that now, and then we'll just quickly go through it tomorrow before we start on the accessibility.
So do you just want us to be able to talk about it, or do you want us to submit?
You can just talk about it, because I have a different homework assignment. I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much stuff. But after tomorrow, you know, maybe I'll decide to have you just post it up so I can review them in more detail. but I'll let you know.
Looks pretty good. Working pretty well overall. Do you have any feedback on the homework, or do you need feedback on the homework or anything?
I posted one.
Mhm.